So to start this diabetes inducing recipe, grab these few things that you'll need, which are some powdered cocaine, some instant yeast, some block of cow, some crystallized cocaine, some reasons why you didn't get into the university you wanted to, and remember folks, always test your salt for good luck.
Why do I do this to myself?
Next, you'll need some softened unsalted butter. Here's a quick tip. If you're someone who's impatient like me, and your butter is rock hard, one way to soften it faster would be to take a bowl, fill up with some water. It doesn't have to be hot or warm, it's really up to you, and then nuke that shit in the microwave while you stand there and contemplate your life choices. I don't know why microwave minutes are so long. Never mind. Moving on, you want to pour your water out into a sink and be careful not to burn yourself like a little dum-dum. And then you want to put the bowl over the butter just to let it soften up. You want to get some room temperature eggs, and if you're fluent in backwards, that says icing sugar. Next, you want to get some full cream milk. Alright, I don't know why it says professional, but I am high status like that. Different variation of powdered cocaine. And finally, some powdered crack, which is Milo. Next, you want to make the Water Roux. So basically a Water Roux is just another fancy word for flour that is cooked with water to make a thick paste-like sort of mixture. The reason why we do this is to make the dough more stretchy and more fluffy. So in a saucepan, you want to combine 2 tablespoons of flour, which is the bread flour, not the all-purpose flour, and also mix in 4 tablespoons of milk and 2 tablespoons of water. Then you want to heat it up. Make sure not to put the heat up too high, and then start whisking immediately. The reason why we want to whisk immediately is so that we want to get rid of all the lumps so that it really thins out. So after a while, you might want to switch to a spatula because look at that, it just becomes sort of like gloopy. Make sure to cook it just for a little while, and then soon enough you'll have a really thick paste-like consistency, and that's what you're looking for. This is what we're gonna be adding to our dough later on to make it more fluffy and delicious. So then you just want to take your roux, put it in a bowl, and then leave it in the fridge to cool off. Next, you want to make the dough for the buns. In a bowl, combine 2.5 cups of bread flour, half a cup of caster sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. The reason why we add the salt is basically just to balance out the flavors, if not the buns will be too sweet on their own. You want to grab your whisk and make sure everything is nicely combined. And while you're whisking, always forget what orientation you're in, because that really helps with the process. And if you happen to spill some on the side, don't worry, just add it back in, because that's where the extra flavor comes in. So now we'll be making the yeast mixture. I know yeast sounds pretty gross, but this is what will give the dough its actual rise. So in a bowl, combine half a cup of milk and around 10 grams of yeast. And you want to make sure your milk isn't too hot or too cold, if not it will kill the yeast or not really activate it. And in the bowl, you want to add in another 1 tablespoon of sugar, which will act as food for the yeast. And I want you to mix it up and leave it for 10 minutes or so. As you can see now, nothing really has happened. But once you come back, boom, look at that. Remember who you called ugly in high school? Well, this is them now. Next, it's time to actually make the dough with all the things you've made before, which are the Water Roux, the yeast mixture, and the flour mixture. So personally, I like to use a stand mixture for this because it just makes it easier, but you're free to use a hand whisk if you love to torture yourself or you just like pain. I personally like to use the dough hook for this because it makes the whole process much easier. So the key to making a good and supple dough is to make sure to add your ingredients all one by one. So firstly, we add the yeast mixture to the flour and make sure to scrape down the bowl to make sure to get all that yeasty goodiness. You then want to stream in one of your chicken spheres so that it gets nice and incorporated. Remember along the way to scrape down the bowl for any flour that hasn't mixed in. This will make sure everything is nicely combined. Next, you want to put in your Water Roux and let it take a spin in your bowl of deliciousness. So after 2 to 3 minutes of mixing, your dough chow should start to form. It should look something like this. Next, you want to add in around 40 grams of unsalted butter bit by bit until it's all well combined into the dough. You then want to knead the dough for around 5 to 7 minutes, and don't worry, it will look very sticky, and this is completely normal. So now that your dough chow has been formed, you now want to work it and leave it to rest for about an hour. And don't worry if it looks very sticky, this is completely normal. And the dough will tend to want to stick together, so just make sure to work with it quickly. To make things easier, I personally like to spray my table with canola oil. This way the dough won't stick to the table. Next, you want to grab a bowl and spray that too. This is what we'll be resting our dough in. Next, you want to empty out your dough onto the grease table. And hey, doesn't that look familiar? That's you getting out of bed every day during quarantine. So next, you want to grease up your fingers and basically just fold the dough over itself. You don't really want to knead it, you just want to make it into a ball. Even an oblong shape will do. You know, life is hard, we can't please everyone. Then you want to put your dough into your grease bowl and basically shape it again to cover up the mess you made before. Don't worry, the dough is not a monster, the dough is your friend. So just gently shape it into whatever shape that you call that. Next, you want to cover the dough with a towel and leave it to rest for an hour or until it doubles in size. Next, it's time to make the topping. So grab a nice big bowl and then to that, add in 35 grams of unsalted butter and 35 grams of caster sugar. Make sure to whisk that up and basically cream the sugar and butter or until the sugar is dissolved. Next, you want to add in half a beaten egg and then continue to whisk that up. Now is the time to use up all that arm strength and give it a nice good whisk. Next, you want to add in 1/4 of a cup of your all-purpose flour, not your bread flour. Next, you want to add in your Milo powder and whisk it up nicely. It should basically form a nice thick consistency, sort of like a Milo paste. And if you have a mild Milo addiction, you can always add more to it. So the topping is going to be piped onto the buns before they go into the oven. So to do that, we need a piping bag. So a small trick is to get a tall glass and basically shove your hand into the glass so that you can open up the piping bag. Then you want to spill all your topping all over the place because you have no self-control, and then put the remaining into the jar and into the piping bag. Make sure to fill up the bag, and there you have it. You have a filled piping bag that can be used later to pipe on your topping. So now we'll be making the filling, which will serve as pockets of deliciousness in the buns. So to a bowl, add 150 grams of cream cheese, aka a lactose intolerance greatest fear, about 50 grams of unsalted butter, and then you just want to whisk that up again. Then you want to add about 100 grams of powdered sugar bit by bit until everything is combined. And I know 100 grams sounds like a lot, but trust me, you will definitely need it. And then you want to add around 7 tablespoons of Milo powder. And again, if you like a more Milo taste, you can add more. Mix it until it forms a nice thick paste. Now it's time to actually fill and top your buns. So now take your dough that's been rested for an hour and wow, look at that. Your dough baby has finally become a dough adult. And after that, I want you to kill your dough baby. Yes. Take out all the air and basically empty it out onto the table again. So now we're going to be dividing the dough into 6 equal parts. So how I like to do it is basically just go through the middle ones and pull apart the dough. And then you want to divide each half by about a third, so to end up with 6 equal pieces. Next, you want to shape your dough offspring into relatively round shapes, and then you want to cup your hands, which is the technique we'll be using to shape the dough. Just a reminder, please do not do this in public, or not, you will be arrested. Then you want to put some flour onto the table, basically to make the process easier. So using the cupping method, you want to go in a circular motion, basically just to shape the dough into a nice plump ball. Don't worry if you don't get it the first time, it takes some practice. Don't be afraid to add more flour if it gets too sticky. Then you want to cover the dough again and leave it for about 30 minutes. Next, you want to get a nice pan and grease it up and place some parchment paper in it. This will be our baking vessel. After your dough has been rested for about 10 to 15 minutes, you then want to fill them. So using a roller pin, roll out the edges, but remember to leave a little bit of dough in the middle. This prevents the dough from exploding and your filling go all over the place in the oven. Next, you want to get about a tablespoon of filling and put it into the middle of the dough. Please remember not to overfill the dough, if not, it will explode in your oven, and no one wants that. And then after that, you just want to fold over the dough over the filling. As you can see, I definitely suck at this, but if I can do it, you definitely can. So you just want to fold the dough over itself and basically cover the filling as much as possible. So just keep doing that and pinch the top so that everything is sealed. You then want to repeat this for a second process for the other pieces of dough until all your pieces are filled up. Make sure to fill them up, seal them nicely to prevent further explosion. You then want to fill them into your baking tray and remember to leave some space in between them to allow them to expand even more. So now you want to leave them to rest for about 15 to 30 minutes. Now it's time to preheat your oven. Preheat your oven to 175 degrees Celsius. After your dough babies version 2 have rested for about 30 minutes, it's now time to top them with your topping. So with your piping bag full of topping, you just want to pipe it onto the surface of the buns in a circular motion. Think of it as a spiral of Milo goodness on top of your buns. And if you're wondering, wow, that's so neat, how did you do that? I thought that to myself while doing this, and then I immediately messed it up after that. You don't have to cover the top of the buns completely because it will expand in the oven. So then you want to continue the rest and fill all the tops and cover up any imperfection that's happened along the way, because fake it till you make it. You then want to place your buns into your preheated oven and bake them for 20 minutes. And voila! You have a delicious tray of Milo Milk Buns with a Milo cream cheese filling. Personally, I recommend sprinkling some powdered sugar on top and enjoying them while they're hot. Generally, I would recommend this if you're someone who just wants to try something new, you want to impress someone, or if you just generally hate yourself. But it is a delicious recipe either way. Now, some more sponsored content.